Alright guys, so a question that I get sent probably about once a week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, is whether or not I would have any tips or advice for someone who's beginning a CCW for the first time. There's a lot of advice, there's a lot of tips that you're going to find out there, but I'm going to come at you from a different angle, and that's just as a normal guy, not some firearms instructor trying to sell you what he's teaching, not some tier 1 operator trying to get you all prepared and gung-ho for going overseas. Just a guy who carries a concealed weapon and has carried a concealed weapon for a very long time. The first tip I think is often overlooked by a lot of people who conceal carry or are starting to conceal carry is going to be your holster. So number one, holsters. Now there's a lot of different holsters out there, from inside the waistband, outside the waistband, Kydex. They all have their pluses, they all have their minuses, and there's a lot of garbage out there too. And I've done another video on some of the garbage that you'll find on eBay that could result in a negligent discharge. You really need to do some shopping around. You really need to do some research. Find a holster that's going to fit and work for you. Now, when I first started concealed carrying, I went with a crossbreed Super Tuck Deluxe. Didn't really like it that much. I ended up going to some more simpler inside the waistband holster. And what I found over time is I like having variety, because there's days you want to just throw your gun in a small single clip holster that you can just clip right onto your belt and run up to the store real quick, grab what you need and come home. Then there's times you might be out and about all day. Living in Arizona, I'm not really concerned a whole hell of a lot about my gun being shown, because open carry is legal, so I like my Kydex. There's a variety of different holsters for every type of person, every type of gun. Get out there, try some, don't let the price get in the way, because if you live in a state like California, which is where I originate from, CCWs, which I had one out there, are a pain in the ass to get. They're expensive. You're going to spend a couple $100, depending on what county you live in, getting your concealed weapons permit. That's after background checks, classes, all the BS. Okay, so you should, and then you're going to spend how much money on your handgun that you're going to carry, or handguns if you carry multiple or have multiple that you want to carry, and then all the training that you're going to do, and then not spend the right money on a holster. And I see guys out there with some of these Uncle Mike's holsters, and they're just jerry-rigging whatever they can so they can carry their gun, and there's no weapon retention. The trigger's not secured in any way, shape, or form from an accidental discharge. So take the time to consider the ways that you need to carry. Okay, do you want a shoulder holster? You know, do you want a hip holster? Do you want an ankle holster? Do you want something else? You know, so that kind of covers tip number one. Consider your holsters. Look at a lot of different options. Don't settle for what's cheap. Tip number two is going to be your weapon selection. Now, a lot of people are going to be stuck with whatever they already have. Okay, you may already own something like a 1911, so that's what you're going to just carry because you can't afford to get something else. But the more you conceal carry, the more you're going to enter into situations where the bigger guns, like a 1911, like a SIG 226 or a Beretta, are going to be a little bit bulky. You're not going to want the gun printing. The gun's going to be showing. Depending on what state you live in, that can also have legal ramifications, because certain states don't allow open carry, and they kind of turn a bad eye towards people who are printing or exposing their weapon when they're supposed to be concealing it. So you might want something a little bit smaller, like a Glock 26. I happen to love Glock 26s and 27s, but there's also even smaller guns like the Raven 25 or some of the air weights that are out there. All of these different guns, all are going to have different possibilities and different capabilities, and you have to find what's going to be comfortable for you. Worst thing I think that a lot of people do when they begin CCWing, concealed carrying, is they just settle for whatever they have, and if that's all you've got, that's fine. But when you have the ability to get something else, try to think ahead. Okay, if you live in a state where the summers are hot and all you wear is shorts, what are you going to do so you can conceal carry your 1911 or your Beretta or even your Glock 19? What are your options going to be? In a lot of cases, you might have a winter gun and a summer gun, and you might want to look into that. If you haven't purchased a gun yet, you might want to start with a smaller gun to begin with, like a 26, maybe something like a Beretta Tomcat. Get something small like that to start with, because it's going to be easier to conceal all year round. And then get yourself something bigger, like the typical nightstand gun, if you will, of like a Glock 19 or a Glock 17 or so on and so forth. So tip number 2, think about the gun that you're going to carry before you buy it. Think about the situations you might be in, where you might have to draw the weapon from. And again, going back to tip number 1 with the holsters, how are you going to carry it? So tip number 3, guys, get comfortable with the law. Spend some time, and I'm not talking about message boards, I'm not talking about Facebook, I'm talking about actual concealed carry websites, okay? And there's numerous ones out there. Just go to Google, type in concealed carry laws. Maybe even spend some time talking to an attorney, depending on what state you live in, and learn your state laws. If you live in a state like Alaska, Texas, Arizona, I think there's a few others, concealed carry, open carry laws are very different from a place like New York or California, okay? Spend the time learning the laws in your area. And I know this isn't the fun part of being a concealed carrier, but we open ourselves up to a huge, enormous liability when we start concealed carrying weapons. And you want to take a lot of things into consideration, because you want to make sure that when you're going out and doing something, it's not just, oh, a friend of a friend of a friend who knows a cop said that this was okay. No, make sure that you know exactly whether or not you need to disclose that weapon to a law enforcement officer if he pulls you over or he questions you. What is the ramifications if you take your weapon into a place that has a no gun sign allowed? These are things that you want to know. And the more comfortable you are with the law, and the more that you get to know your surroundings, i.e., the normal stores you go to, do they allow firearms? Is there a no firearm sign here? You'll know, okay, we'll avoid that store. Or if I'm only running up to that store, don't take my gun. Or take my gun off in the car, lock it in the center console, and go into that store. Or exercise your your Second Amendment right, and don't give a shit. So get comfortable with these things the right way. Don't go on to some random website, ask a question, and fish around until you find the answer you want. Find the answers that are the right answers, okay? So tip number 3, in closing, is learn the laws and learn them thoroughly. Become confident in them, okay? And number 4, and again, I want to reiterate that this is a video and tips and advice for beginners, not seasonal people who've been carrying for a decade or more, or carry for work. This is for the realtor, the mom, the dad that's out there that's considering carrying for the first time, or has just started carrying, or is in the process of getting their permit, depending on where you live. Don't go overboard. Okay, there's these guys, and you'll find them on every single website. Oh, pocket dump, and they're taking out a knife, and pocket dump. I got my 1911, I got my Glock 19, I carry a 26 on my ankle, I got this knife, that knife, I carry handcuffs, flashlights, pepper spray. You don't need all that, okay? Now, there are people out there that will tell you that you need all that, and I have nothing against people that carry all that. But if you're a realtor and you're tired of going into foreclosed homes and running into transients, so you decide, hey, I'm a little tired of running into all these shady crackheads in these foreclosed homes, I'm going to go ahead and start getting a concealed carry license and start concealed carrying. You don't need a pair of handcuffs, you don't need pepper spray, you don't need all the other shit, okay? Carry your weapon, use it in a self-defense, life or death situation, and you'll be perfectly fine as long as you're within the parameters of the law. Leave a lot of the other stuff at home, or forget all about it, because you really don't need it. Okay, now if you're someone in a different line of work who has different training, different experience, sure, carry the stuff. Throwing handcuffs on a person is not easy. Throwing handcuffs on a combative person is extremely difficult. Okay, throwing a pair of handcuffs in your back pocket and carrying them with you with your concealed weapon when you have no training just makes you look like a wannabe police officer. Okay, carrying pepper spray, sure, it's a great idea, but if you're still trying to get comfortable with the idea of carrying a firearm and you've never really carried pepper spray, and it's just really just occupying another pocket on you, creating another bulge, making it more uncomfortable to go out and do your day-to-day things, well, why are you carrying it? You know, stick to what's practical, stick to what's comfortable for you. Now, if what's comfortable for you is having one of these MRSs, if you're a man, or an actual purse if you're a woman, sure, load it up with all the stuff you want. You know, hell, if you don't have to put the guns that you own, go get an AR pistol and throw that in your purse and say you're concealed carrying it. By all means, it's a God-given right as Americans. But I recommend that you keep it minimal. And I think you'll find and be a lot more happy in the long run with your overall experience concealed carrying if you kind of keep it to the minimum. All right, guys, that's all I have for tips today. If you have any questions, you're interested in concealed carrying or open carrying, and you want to run stuff by me, feel free to email me or comment below. All right, you guys have a good week, and God bless.